Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome to our chapter How To.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Hannah.
Reading is a huge part of our lives. We have to do it every day to survive. In The Road by Cormac McCarthy, communion is a major role in the plot. According to Foster's Guide, communion is a way to share and maintain peace. Foster reminds us that in the real world, breaking bread together is an act of sharing and peace, since if you're not breaking bread, you're not breaking heads. McCarthy uses meal scenes to not only give the characters but the audience a break from what seems like the never-ending journey that they travel on the road, and the fear that comes along with their adventure. The meal that the boy and his father share allows us to see a more intimate connection between the two. Throughout the whole book, we really only see them in one setting, and that's on the road. This break in scenery, where the characters are sitting down and having a hearty meal, allows the characters to not only have communion among themselves, but with the audience.
As Foster says in his book, Greek myths can be present in our unconscious minds and can be there even if we don't realize it. Everyone knows the story of the Crucible, with the teenage girl named Abigail who accuses many people of the town of being witches. But have you seen her resemblance to Medusa, a figure of Greek mythology? Medusa, after being seduced by Poseidon, was cursed by Athena to turn her hair into snakes. Both Medusa and Abigail were young girls who turned into monsters. Abigail, like Medusa, was seduced by a man in a time when it was considered sinful for an unmarried woman to sleep with someone. In both stories, after this happened, Abigail and Medusa turned into monsters. Abigail through her actions, and Medusa through her appearance. While Abigail and Medusa seemed like the antagonists of their stories, their evil is a product of the misogynistic ways of their time, and they're partially victims themselves. As Foster explains in his book, drawing parallels to Greek myth can emphasize certain ideas in a novel. In this case, it was the idea of victims being blamed while society is at fault.
According to Foster, when analyzing a work, you need to know background information and context of the time period in order to fully analyze the text. When reading Edgar Allan Poe's Masque of the Red Death, I had to research context to fully understand its political nature. Masque of the Red Death details a red death falling over a land, and a prince who ignores the plight of those in a lower social class than him, but throws grand parties and masquerade balls with other wealthy guests and never leaves his palace. The work goes into great detail about the intricate decoration of the prince's home, most importantly describing a dark, abandoned room that frightened his guests. The large clock is also an integral part of the work, spooking the guests and musicians. During a lively masquerade ball, a large looming masked figure appears and frightens the prince, and he and his guests try to escape this figure, then try to fight it, but eventually all die. It's easy to see that this masked figure represents death, but what political statement is Poe making? One way to look at this is that Poe is making a statement that the decadence of the wealthy class and that mentality of being in denial of death. The prince and the people at the party believe they are safe from the Red Death because they are up in the fancy palace. The masks and costumes and elaborately decorated rooms could also symbolize the distinct difference between the rich and the poor's lifestyles, as if those rooms and nice clothing could protect the prince and his guests from the Red Death. The clock chimes symbolize the end of life and the coming of the masked figure. In the end, when death comes to the party, all die, despite their attempts to hide or fight it off, making Poe's ultimate message that death comes for everyone, regardless of social class.
In The Memory Keeper's Daughter, the whole plotline revolves around a character named Phoebe. Phoebe has Down syndrome, which in the book and in life in general is a characteristic that is very noticeable. In the chapter marked for greatness, Foster says that physical imperfections make characters stand out more for character differentiation. The second Phoebe was born, both Caroline and David knew that Phoebe had Down syndrome. For more context of why David gave Phoebe away, when Phoebe was born, it was the 1960s, during which Down syndrome was associated with a short lifespan and poor quality of life because of resources available and medical advancements not made yet for that disorder. Phoebe's disorder is recognized by her almond, flat face, and epicanthal fold, and this makes Phoebe's character different than all the others. Phoebe's Down syndrome is also symbolic because it shows how much she has to go through. Kim Edwards created the plotline of David abandoning Phoebe, Phoebe not being able to go to public school at first, and other challenges that she had to overcome. These challenges show that in addition to the physical abnormalities, Phoebe also has to overcome emotional and psychological troubles throughout her life, which represent the time period of the 1960s.
In Foster's Guide, Foster explains how blindness can be both literal and figurative. In The Giver, the people in the society were blind in the literal sense because they were blind to color, and were also blind in the figurative sense because they are blind to pain and suffering. As Jonas starts to see more and more color through the story, he also becomes aware of not only the tragedies and suffering that are being kept from the people in the society, but also the joys they are missing out on. As the Giver allows Jonas to see more of this for himself, Jonas gains insights as he realizes the utopia they are living in is actually a dystopia. While all the other characters remain blind,
Jonas attempts to leave the city to release all the newly gained experiences, both good and bad, to the people in the city so they can be relieved of their blindness.